Hey, welcome back to Real Takes, where we are all movie love all the time. I'm Ann Stott, and tonight we're doing Halloween themed Real Takes, which is a little tricky for me because so many American Halloween movies are zombie movies and vampire movies, and they freak me out. They scare me. And I know some people love scary movies. They love to be scared and like survive the fear and the adrenaline, and it like gives them a rush, and then they leave sort of like happy and psyched. And that's not what happens for me. I get scared and then I stay scared, and I'm sort of anxious and freaked out, and I think freaky things are going to come around every corner at me, and I don't like it. So I had to go another direction. I had to go sort of tap back into the like pagan roots of Halloween, Day of the Dead, All Saints Day, All Souls Day. Those are more Christian, by the way. They were added later. But like, communing with the beyond, contemplating what's come before, looking toward what's coming ahead. And I am doing that by celebrating and shining so much movie love on the 1998 film Afterlife, which I saw in a theater in 1998 and was so moved. I saw it with my cousin, and we sat there after the movie sort of teary and just looking at each other and not wanting to go anywhere or do anything. I loved the movie, and I've always loved it, and it's been really hard to see it or get it in America in the last few years. But the Criterion Collection this summer did a reissue of it, and it's streaming on the Criterion Channel now. And there are some other ways to see it, but that's the main way. And I highly recommend the Criterion Channel anyway, because they show so many great films all the time. Highly recommend. Anyway, Afterlife, the 1998 film by Hirokazu Kore-eda, directed and written by him, and starring, I want to get this right, so forgive the notes, Arata Iura, Erika Oda, and Susumu Terajima. And the cinematographer, gorgeous cinematography, is by Yutaka Yamazaku. And this was the second feature film of Kore-eda's, and we find ourselves in a way station of sorts that is a kind of seemingly run down, abandoned kind of school building. And what we very quickly learn is that this is a place where people who have recently died come to come as a sort of intermediary space. And in their time in this space, which is 7 days, which relates to a Zen Buddhist philosophy about a sort of between time, they have to choose one memory that they will reenact in this week and will be able to take with them when they go on to whatever's next. And there's no discussion about what's next. That's not what the film is about. It's about this time, this in-between time. And the sort of social work type characters who help the newly deceased navigate choosing a memory and reenacting the memory. So again, this was the second feature film of Kore-eda's, and he had worked in documentary and television. And so he actually interviewed over 500 people about the one memory they would want to take with them if they could only take one memory with them. And he initially thought that the film would be a feature film, but it would really only feature these real people with their memories and then the reenactments of the memories. But as he got into the idea and the making of the idea, it evolved, and he did use 11 of the 500 people that he interviewed in the film. So there are 11 real people in the film who aren't actors, who talk about the memory they would want to take with them when they die. And then there are also some scripted memories with actors. And then as he was developing the film, these sort of social work characters became more prominent in the narrative. There's all sorts of lovely play between the ethereal and the material in the film. So on the one hand, we're, very quickly we know where we're placed and that these people have recently died, which is handled in a very matter-of-fact way. And we're dealing with these issues of memory and everything that each person's memory evokes, and the fact that they're going to go on to somewhere else that's unnamed and unknown. And yet we're in this school building, and the days of the week still matter, and the 7 days are still a distinct time, and there are seasons that are discussed, and people play games and read books and watch VHS tapes. And actually, even in 1998, some of this felt really quaint in a lovely way, not in a precious way. But it feels even more quaint now because some of the things we're seeing, like VHS tapes, are so completely outdated now, even though they were, cutting edge technology at the time. So there's this lovely play between the ethereal and sort of, the grounded physical experience that's happening in the movie. And another way that play is highlighted is through the cinematography. And when I first saw the film, I hadn't seen any classic Japanese cinema. So I hadn't seen any Kurosawa films, and I hadn't seen any Ozu films. And so the way the movie was shot was just completely new to me. And it was to me, it was all, my reaction to the film was all tied up in the subject matter, and my experience of how it was filmed was connected to the subject matter. And now that I have seen some classic Japanese film, in particular related to this, some Ozu, I sort of understand the camera angles and the shot choices differently than I did then. And it's also interesting because the first half of the film feels to me like it borrows a lot from Ozu, and when I read other people writing about it, they agree that it borrows a lot from Ozu. But I did read an interview with Kore-eda where he said, people compare me to Ozu, but he said the filmmaker I'm closest to is Ken Loach. So that was very interesting to me and makes me want to go back and watch some Ken Loach films again. But the first half feels more Ozu-like, or maybe Ken Loach-like. And then the second half has much more handheld work in it as the sort of action and focus of the film. Okay, I'm just busting in on myself here because I didn't handle this whole cinematography situation very well. So I'm going to handle it better now. They actually hired 2 cinematographers for this film, which is a pretty unusual situation. So they hired Yutaka Yamazaki, as I mentioned before, and he was hired to shoot the interviews with the newly deceased characters and any interactions with our sort of social work type characters. And then they hired a second cinematographer, Masayoshi Tsukita, and he was going to exclusively film the memory reenactments, which originally were going to be a very big part of the movie. Now, Tsukita was a documentary filmmaker. He was also a still photographer, and he did the still photography that's in the movie, and he's famous for having shot a lot of rock luminaries of the 70s rock scene. Most famously, he did a ton of Bowie photographs. So he was on board to make these memory reenactment scenes that were supposed to be a big part of the end of the film. And Yamazaki was supposed to do some handheld work shooting the making of the reenactments, but not very much, just get a few things here and there. And what happened was he kept shooting and he kept shooting and he kept shooting. And the producers were actually unhappy because film is really expensive. They were shooting on film. And, they would grumble to Kore-eda, and Kore-eda would say to him, I think we got enough. You can stop filming. And apparently Yamazaki would say, yeah. And then he would just keep filming. And they did a cut of the movie where the reenactments were a big part of the end of the film. And when they screened that, they realized that they didn't need them, that at that point they were sort of redundant. And what they ended up using was a lot of Yamazaki's handheld footage of the making of the reenactments, which I think is so beautiful and effective at, adding to this kind of memory within a memory, and these questions about how we construct memory and how we create memory. And so that's what happened with the cinematographers, a very interesting situation. And apparently Kore-eda felt bad about cutting out most of these reenactments. I think only 2 remain in the film. Because Tsukida had done all this work on them, and that was the original plan, but they just weren't needed in the end. So that's the cinematography deal, and we now return to our regularly scheduled programming. We ended up using some of this impromptu stuff that the cinematographer filmed because it was so right and so perfect for the story they were telling. And in fact, that was the first time they had worked together, but he's the cinematographer that Kore-eda uses all the time now. Oh boy, jumping in again. Okay, so I'm learning a little something about research, and what I'm learning is that when you listen to an interview or read an article and you take a fact from it and then you put it in your video as, fact, you need to check the date of the interview or the article, because that fact may no longer be a fact. So I watched some interview from a bunch of years ago that said that Yamazaki was the cinematographer that Kore-eda had used on all his projects. And at that time, that was true. That is no longer true. So they worked together on many films, but the last few films of Kore-eda, he has not been the cinematographer. And in the meantime, Yamazaki has shot over 100 documentaries. So he's done a lot of other work besides just working with Kore-eda. Okay, back we go again. So there's just something so gentle and mystical and beautiful about this movie. It's truly heartfelt. It's about the memories we hold dear, why we hold them dear, how we hold them, how we see them. And then, it has a film within a film component to it of how do we represent experiencing those memories? How do we represent people's experience of their own memories? So it has all these lovely layers to it. And it's just a really special film. And this was the film that kind of, I think, well, his first film did well too, but this film definitely took his career to the next level in terms of international recognition. It was screened at Sundance. It was his first time being screened at Sundance. There's an interesting interview with him from that time where the interview asked him, was he excited to be at Sundance? And he said he was excited to be at Sundance, but everyone, filmmakers in Japan and Asia told him to beware, because he said at Sundance, they're really only interested in the American independents. They're not interested in the international film as much. But he did very well at Sundance. And many of his films over the next decades have done really well, culminating in a way with his 2018 film Shoplifters winning the Palme d'Or at Cannes, which is also just an incredible, beautiful film. So I'm a big fan of all his work. But this movie holds a special place in my heart because it was the first film of his that I saw. So it's Afterlife, and actually the Japanese title, when it's translated directly, actually means or says Wonderful Life, which Kore-eda liked better because he wanted the film and the location in the film to have this feeling of like, you've graduated from life, not like this sad, morbid thing has happened, but this kind of joyful release into a new experience has happened. So Afterlife, maybe Wonderful Life, really lovely film. I hope you see it. I hope you enjoy it. If you're into the zombie vampire thing, hit me up in the comments and tell me what I should see. I don't know if I'll ever see it, but I'm curious what people like. And I hope you enjoy it. And I will see you next Wednesday. Thanks for watching Real Takes. Hit the subscribe button below so the algorithms will tell you when new episodes are out. And if you want to support Real Takes, please visit my Patreon page where you can join at any tier from $2 to $100 per thing I make. The $15 tier is specifically about supporting Real Takes, and you'll get behind the scenes information and be thanked in future videos. See you next Wednesday.